Well, good day. I'm Commander John Sunderland at the NATO Strategic Communications Center of Excellence in Riga, Latvia. We've recently agreed to join forces through a partnership agreement with the National Defense University, and today's discussion will highlight that cooperation. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Cassandra Lewis, the Acting Chancellor and Dean of the College of the Information and Cyberspace, and Mr. Jānis Sārts, the Director of the Center here. We wanted to maybe start the conversation today a little bit along the lines of technology, perhaps, and how technology is really racing ahead of us in many ways, and so are the threats that we face both today and tomorrow. I was wondering if either of you might provide some perspective on how do we keep up and how do we make sense of it all?
You should know better than ask an educator, how do you keep up? Because I think you have a sense of what I'll say. I think when it comes to keeping up with technology, or for that matter, any trends, any issues that we need to be aware of as national security professionals, then to me, it's really staying connected to the research. I am a strong proponent of ensuring that we are keeping up with the latest research that's coming out of industry, that's coming out related to technology, that's reframing how we tackle complex problems, wicked problems, disruptive problems. So I think that research and keeping an eye on research is a significant part of that. I also believe in staying connected to various sources, whether they are industry sources, keeping up with seminars, education. You know, I'm going to advocate certainly for education and training as a measure of that, because that's certainly part of what we offer at CIC. So I think all of the ways that one can keep up with technology, as well as just trends in general, really speaks to being an informed professional. And so I'll leave it there for Jānis to jump in to perhaps take us a little deeper, but that is what I would definitely propose.
Well, first I can tell I agree with Cassandra, obviously, but also I would like to add that I think we have to take into account when looking at today's situation that most of the new technology comes out of the private sector. And also when we think about the threats coming from vulnerabilities within that technology, they might not be necessarily directed at the military or national security establishment directly, but they would be touching that indirectly. So if we look, for instance, at the social media, well, they've never been designed with anything of national security in mind, but as they've grown in stature, in importance, and became the modern agora of a democratic society, the vulnerabilities that are built within these systems have had an impact on the national security, on the military establishments. And I think, to me, these are the key ideas to, especially from an information perspective, is to understand what would be the next vulnerabilities coming out of the new emerging technologies that might not necessarily be directly directed at the military, but would be undermining the society at large. And I think we're going to face a number of very substantive challenges that also relate to the information space and how humans react to it. And these would be then when we will create 5G enabled Internet of Things, that would certainly make a very different information environment from the one we have today, and we'll have to adapt to that. And of course, I always stress the importance of data. Data being the driver for many of the new technologies and the future technologies, and the quality of that, and access and types of data and who holds it are going to be the key factors in future power relationships. And all of that, one way or another, relate to the information space, because after all, we humans are social beings. We relate to information. What we receive is what we are. And the immediate changes in this changes the way we act, the way we perceive things, how we can cooperate. And I think that's what we've been observing. And staying ahead of a curve, that's, I think, what we have to do. And to be best at doing that, we have to get all the best minds together to think through and anticipate rather than react.
I think that makes perfect sense. I recognize that one of the things that I think we just have to contend with is that within our various spaces, we don't have all the answers. And I think that strikes at what you're saying. It isn't, these problems won't be solved by industry alone. It won't be solved by government alone. It won't be solved by academia alone, but really it will take that really the driving force of collaboration and sharing and information and data sharing to really be able to make a significant progress and potentially anticipate where the challenges are coming in the future. Makes perfect sense.
Very good. I appreciate the insights on there, and you know, along the lines of the problems that we're facing, the challenges, and the nature of needing to attack it from a cooperative perspective. It kind of it lends itself to the nature of these problems too. Dr. Lewis, I hear you talk about research and the connection of research in order to understand those pieces. Jānis, I hear you talk about, you know, anticipating the future challenges there. Are there some certain pieces that you're working on at the Center of Excellence that might address some of those challenges that could kind of serve as an example for us on one of those items?
Well, there are plenty of important areas that I think we can work together on. One of them I just mentioned, 5G, and how 5G enabled Internet of Things is going to change information environment. Not all the other changes that they will facilitate, but especially on the information environment, and what would be potential vulnerabilities, data security, data on societies. That's another area of interest and the place that we are developing. Also finding new tools and ways how to train people, creating synergies in between the latest technologies like virtual realities, AI simulation of the information environment, and then immersing people to be trained in these environments to actually achieve that. Because if you think about the information people or strategic communication people, they have very difficult tasks because there's no kind of safe place to train. Well, that means either you go out and do the real thing, or you do something very, very, artificial. So creating a training space that is and feels real and reacts in quite a semi-real ways to what you're putting in would be a significant boost to the capability, which is very needed, that we're working already for 2 years on. And I think that would be also a potential area of collaboration. And of course, ultimately, understanding the threat actors, understanding what they're thinking, what their methods. And of course, we know quite a bit about these actors, but there's always something new to learn. And that's also a very important area to exchange, to make sure that future decision makers do understand their logic and their modus operandi.
That's excellent. Thank you. You know, related to the education and training piece, then, Dr. Lewis, you know, from that educational side, are you seeing certain trends, you know, or certain topics that kind of relate to this sort of research that we're discussing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think it all relates. I think that in regards to trends, I would say that I think Jānis mentioned one in particular, in that it has been advantageous in the past to have these types of educational programs where there hasn't been a firmer handle on whether or not when students complete a training or complete a program that they can actually perform, that they have they have gained the skills necessary to be able to make an impact when they graduate. So just broadly, I would say no different from any other civilian institution. One of the biggest trends that we are really in the midst of in professional military education is outcomes-based education, which is really, to me, the accountability piece that says, you have got to ensure that what you have proposed to have your graduates learn, that in fact they are gaining the necessary skills, competencies, and knowledge to be able to make a difference when they actually have to perform in their professional lives or their warfighting duties. So outcomes-based education is certainly one of the biggest trends. But then I also think that there is a trend, and I feel bad even calling it a trend because it shouldn't be. But just in terms of relevance, making sure that the education that we are providing for our students are relevant, that it will make an impact immediately to be able to thwart our adversaries, to be able to anticipate their strategies, and for us to be able to effectively create strategies and policies that will defend our respective, our nations, our organizations, our businesses. So making sure that that education is relevant, hands-on, ensuring that there isn't only theoretical understanding, but also practical implications for to really dig into student knowledge. That ties a lot with trends that we're seeing in the civilian sector. But I think when you consider the imperative that's on government agencies to ensure that they're providing relevant, actionable education that students can immediately learn, immediately grasp, and then employ in their professional duties, then that is really, really important. And I think it's something that needs to stay rather than be considered a trend.
That's well put, especially in consideration of NATO's updated doctrine, NATO's emphasis on understanding. It bleeds right into the continual effort that really this is. It's a culture of learning in order to keep up with the understanding and be able to be the agile and adaptive force that's needed to complement that. Very good. I wanted to transition into kind of an outlook question, if I may, too, in terms of, living in a digital world. We're all very much affixed to our technology. We're very much affixed to living with the applications that we have, and fundamentally that's changed the ways that we interact, right? It's given a lot more power or influence, to maybe our soldiers, on front lines, senior and junior, and it's fundamentally changed the way that we collaborate as well. So it's affected both of our organizations and probably organizations around the world. From a future standpoint, what's your view on the scope of a 5 to 10 year time frame? Where do you see us going from here? And does anything come to mind with how our respective organizations might address some of those pieces?
Well, I'll probably start. I think what we will see increasingly is the speed of change. Very, very fast. So in that environment, the key factors will be ability to adapt and agility. That will ultimately be one of the key elements for the institutions within the national security and members within these institutions to succeed. And that, I think, very well connects to the just previous point made, that quality of the education and ability of those that are part of that education or finished certain stage of that education, ability to learn continuously, learn, and based on that learning, adapt not only personally, but also system-wise. And that is going to be one of the key challenges for all the institutions. And therefore, I think there will have to be, a good mix of two things. Embracing as much as possible the new opportunities brought in by the emerging technology, with understanding of vulnerabilities. And to me, one of the key things we're lacking at this point as we develop these emerging technologies is security within the design of developing of those, which is lacking at my point. From my perspective, that has to be more enforced through one or another means. And secondly, let's not forget that we're still humans. We have still human features, and still we have to cater for those. So a balance in between embracing the new and the technology, but also remembering who we are as a humans, what we stand for, what are the values, and why do we want it all to protect. And I think that will be the key balances to be struck in the next 10 years.
So I think that Jānis made my answer really incredibly easy for me, because I'll just actually build on what he said. Really, I absolutely agree. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, there will be that emphasis on lifelong learning. Goes without saying that if you're content with the education that you may have gained in the past, and you're not willing to learn and adapt and grow, you will be left behind. You won't be able to, we won't, as people, as allies, as within our organizations, we won't be able to meet the challenges of tomorrow and even future challenges. So that lifelong learning is absolutely critical. And even his second point, which I'll build on, which talks to the role of values. I think as we're going to have to struggle with and figure out, how do we consider interdisciplinary areas such as ethics and privacy. We can't focus on the technologies without the data, without thinking about the implications on ethics, on people, on biases that may be built into systems. All of those things will need to come to bear. I think that when you even look at current events, it's showing you what's happening when you don't pay attention to what matters to us as humans, what keeps our democracies intact, what calls for the balance of profit and motives. So I think all of those trends, all of those major and significant issues, we will have to wrestle with and really come to make advances with. I don't know if I can go so far as to say solve, but we will have to pay greater attention to these values of ethics and privacy in the next 5 to 10 years. For sure, we will have to pay greater attention to those areas.
Thank you both for your comments on that question and throughout our discussion today. I'll wrap up here by saying that the discussion, I think, today demonstrates we are truly stronger together, and we look forward to building on the complementary interests of both organizations. I want to thank both of our participants, Dr. Cassandra Lewis, National Defense University, and Jānis Sārts from the NATO Strategic Center of Excellence. Again, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.